But you see there's a separation between the two.
But people always treat Islam completely different.
I don't think that they do.
You wouldn't think that. I'm telling you because I am the victim of it. I am sitting on the other end and I see this happening whether it's me and anyone else.
But that's not...
And hello everybody, welcome back to British Stand. We're going to be reacting to a fiery debate, and it's everybody's favourite political commentator, Fahima Mahmood, whatever her name is. Again, I don't know how she gets on there, but she's getting a lot of screen time recently on right-wing media channels as well. So we're going to be listening to a ferocious row erupt between, I think, a right-wing political commentator and then her, as they talk about the Koran burning row. Of course, the individual that got lifted for burning his own Koran, if you remember, a few months ago. So, yeah, let's watch and react, guys. But as always, please do hit the like button, hit the subscribe button and all that jazz. And yeah, let's have a watch of this debate.
We get straight into it with a debate about what I'd argue could lead to the end of Western liberal democracy, the reintroduction of blasphemy laws. A man has been found guilty of a religiously aggravated public offence after burning a Koran outside the Turkish consulate in London, in a case that has sparked fierce debate about freedom of expression. Hamid Koskan shouted anti-Islamic slurs as he set the text alight in Knightsbridge in February, and footage showed passers-by confronting and attacking him. The 50-year-old argued it was a protest against President Erdogan and a lawful act of free expression, but the court ruled his actions caused harassment and distress. Joining me now to discuss whether the burning of religious texts should be illegal is the broadcaster and political commentator Fahima Mohammed and campaigns officer at the National Secular Society, Alejandro Sanchez. Welcome to both of you. Lovely seeing. I got those names perfectly right. Alejandro was the one I was very proud of particularly. So welcome. Obviously, you're both familiar with this particular case. Fahima, if we could start with you. Do you understand people's concerns about this conviction?
I do to an extent, but I actually don't understand why people would like to have something which historically is so sinister. When it comes to freedom of expression, I don't know why we're talking about it as being, blasphemy laws. We're not here to say that we cannot have debate and criticism. It happens within all forms of society, religion and not religion. When it comes to protests, when it comes to debate, but on the streets, publicly, and you are targeting a particular group in that sort of sense. Historically, we know in Nazi Germany, that was what was done to the Jewish sort of books. And that is not something that I want my children or anyone else's children growing up to think that that's okay.
Okay, well, every protest arguably targets someone, but do you agree with that? Do you understand why people are very wary and concerned about this decision?
Yeah, absolutely. But just responding to...
Wait, quickly, guys, just before we continue, what she's going on about there is about the thing with the Quran, but she doesn't talk about flag burning. I put the, burning of religious texts in the same bracket as burning a flag. Do you know what I mean? And in terms of if a Bible was burnt, she wouldn't have the same sort of outrage. So I do think it is based subjectively on terms of what religious scholar something is or what flag something is, which it decides whether they're going to be outraged on it or not. So yeah, if they were burning the Union Jack, I don't think that lefty political commentator would care that much, as only because it's the Quran. Or in fact, if it was the Bible, I don't think she would be caring and having that outrage as much either.
To Fahima's point, this was a political protest outside the Turkish consulate. And it was a protest against Islamism. It was a protest against an idea. And the law should protect people, but it shouldn't protect ideas. And Hamid was motivated by the Islamization of Turkey. His family has faced great suffering in the Armenian genocide at the hands of Islamists. And he was making a peaceful protest against an idea. And he was attacked and assaulted for doing that.
Yeah,
I don't think it's peaceful.
Well, okay, well, you said that you don't understand why people might not like it, but we don't have to like I don't like pro-Palestinian marchers being out there shouting for jihad or shouting for a global intifada.
Yeah, and they have been, convicted for certain things like that.
Well, if it's incitement for hatred, but do you think the burning of a book is actually inciting hatred, inciting violence?
Absolutely. I would be against any religious text to be burnt, not just the Quran, because Islamism is an extreme, and a lot of 2 billion people across the world uphold that religious text as a form of their identity.
Well, let's talk about those 2 billion
people. That is actually taken away from those people that actually do that. You're trying to say that Islamists and that text, it goes hand in hand, and that's where there's a problem.
No, I think that he said, well, Islamists and that text do go hand in hand. Also, regular Muslims who don't follow the extremes of that ideology go hand in hand. But of course, the two are connected. But he would argue, and others would argue, that actually some of the people who are most affected by blasphemy laws are Muslims. Within Muslim-majority countries, doing something like that will get you killed, has led to people being killed.
But that's the thing, that's not blasphemy laws. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You can have blasphemy laws in those countries which, they actually will not even allow you to speak against a faith or whatever. That's blasphemy laws. You guys are not understanding the terminology. But the fact that it leads to hate and incitement, I'm talking about the laws that are existing in this country that protects all faith. And I think that, Britain is one of those few democracies which is soft secular and the best in the world that actually has a sort of, a tolerance for all faiths and actually protects even the minorities.
But the other people, of course, that we have to tolerate is people who don't have any faith, right?
Faith and no faith. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. No, but the point is that there are people out there who don't believe in Allah or God or Jesus, but they have the right. But they have the right to express even their hatred of those ideologies.
They can express it, but not in that way. Because I wouldn't. If you have a child tomorrow, they don't like something, they don't, want anything to, happen in the way they want, so they can go and burn what the other person cares about.
Yes, they can. That's the law in this country.
What we are fighting antisocial behaviour. We are.
At the end of the day, it's whilst again I don't necessarily condone such behaviour, but trying to get someone charged for something like this for burning a book, that's literally what it is. That's what it is. So yeah, I don't agree with it whatsoever. And this lady, this political commentator, is of course trying to push blasphemy laws. She thinks that people should be charged, and it's not inciting hatred whatsoever. If you own a book and burn it, it's not a problem. And by the way, again, I just keep on saying I don't condone doing it, but people should be able to do it and not face consequences.
Trying to set a standard and a precedent.
So now
this is not about.
So if you don't mind, could I ask you a question? Sorry. Do you think, if it's antisocial, that if someone went to a Harry Potter convention and burnt a Harry Potter book, do you think that they should be arrested and be convicted?
You can't compare a religious text to that.
No, but if it's antisocial, if it's about burning a text...
It is antisocial, absolutely.
But for some, do you understand? Like, I know you believe in the word of...
I understand that, but at the end of the day, I would respect the fact that that person that's going in there in public, burning whatever it is that someone else likes, it shouldn't be happening. That's why
it's not about whether it should be happening. The question is, it can happen because we have the laws that should protect and do protect people for it.
It can't happen.
Well, it does happen.
The public law order and the Equalities Act and all of this humanitarian acts that are there, it does protect people, whether it's of faith and no faith. This is not just about people of my faith.
So, Alejandro, are atheists protected here? Their rights to protest an ideology that they fundamentally disagree with?
Well, Hamit's right to freedom of expression certainly wasn't protected in this case. And what I would say to Fahima is that the CPS and the judge, they both acknowledged that damaging a religious text is not in itself a crime. But what we have here is a Public Order Act being repurposed as a proxy blasphemy law. And it seems like because Hamit was attacked by a knifeman for expressing his views, that is, at least in part, the basis on which his conduct has been deemed disorderly. So this is victim blaming. It's creating a heckler's veto that encourages violent reprisals. And it's a means of appeasing religious fundamentalists. And as we can see, it's sort of depressingly predictable. Hamit Koskin received an Osman warning from the Metropolitan Police at 2 a.m. last night. There is an imminent threat against his life. So when you try to appease fundamentalists, they're just emboldened.
Well, there's an argument for... There's an argument that this is actually offensive to regular Muslims. The idea that a regular Muslim wouldn't be able to respond without violence towards someone burning what they consider to be a holy text.
I do not condone
Like, we have to protect them from their own violence.
No, at the end of the day, I do feel that, that response should not have been. I do not think that anyone who, doesn't like what he did should have done that. That's absolutely incorrect. And I do not condone that kind of behavior. We are going to find extremists. We are going to find things like that. But that should not portray the fact that when you do something like that, we have to understand how society and behaviors work. And when you are putting forward that if you don't like something, and instead of doing a peaceful protest without having to burn and desecrate, leading to hate and incitement, which in this public law order and the acts and the hatred kind of regulations adhere to, it keeps this country more civil than anywhere else in the world, because we have some sort of civilization of where it is free to speak, but with responsibility.
Okay,
that's the problem that we're not understanding. It's about responsibility. It's about understanding that, not everyone, like you and I, we can talk here, we can say things, but people on the streets, we cannot control that. So these laws and orders keeps it in hand. We don't realize that, what's happening in the US and what's happening in the sort of like European states, and I've traveled worldwide. This is the main country, I would say, in the entire world that keeps it civil, because we have those protections for everyone.
But it sounds like you're arguing that if we don't have a law like this, then it's going to be uncivil. The point is that we have laws to protect us, and it's up to the individuals to remain civil. So it puts the onus on people in our society to not respond with violence, to remain
every
civil.
Company, every business, even in this place when we're speaking, we're regulated by the Ofcom, whatever it may be, in Ofsted, in schools, there is always going to be some sort of regulation. We're not here. There's no such thing as absolute free. And when you have that in the US, you see the riots that are happening for days. You see that people that are even inciting hate covered by those kind of free speeches. It really does.
Because that's part of what the judge said was this was the argument that it was going to incite. This man, he hated Muslims because he burnt the book. Even though the guy said this is an ideology that I have an issue with.
Yeah.
What do you think about this argument? The idea is if you hate the ideology, you hate the followers of the ideology.
No, not at all. That doesn't follow. That's a conflation.
But this is what the judge said, essentially.
Well, we think he's mistaken in his assessment. Mohammed didn't use the word Muslims during his protest, and I think that's really telling. He was talking about Islam, Islamisms, and the doctrines that follow from that.
Yeah. Do you think that I know you said you don't think that any religious text should be burned, but do you recognise this what people are talking about in terms of a two-tier
no, because you see both sides.
No, but do you see I don't see anybody getting arrested for burning a Bible in front of Westminster Abbey, for example. That just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen because no one's done it. You go and see if someone, at the end of the day, if someone was to go burn a Torah tomorrow, it wouldn't be like, oh, it's free speech. It would be anti-Semitic.
No, I'm sorry, I disagree. I disagree with you there, because
you might disagree,
anybody could burn the Torah. The point is that's an ideology. If people have issues with an ideology, I don't have a problem.
That is the ideology.
But that's a separation. But you see there's a separation between the two.
But people always treat Islam completely different.
I don't think they do.
You wouldn't think that. I'm telling you because I am the victim of it. I am sitting on the other end and I see this happening, whether it's me and anyone else.
But that's not to say that anti-Muslim bigotry isn't real. But do you think that anybody should be able to criticise Islam without being an anti-Muslim bigot?
We criticise each other all the time between us Muslims. We do that all the time, and we can do that here.
Yeah, but the problem is that criticism, unfortunately, leads to violence in many Muslim countries.
Why are you talking about there? We're talking about the laws here. We are here
unfortunately, that's led to laws in this country as well between Muslims.
No, it's not. You think?
Yeah, because unfortunately, you had the film come out a couple of years ago. A certain sect of Islam considered it offensive and went out and shut down what other Muslims believed was a totally valid film.
Look, they are going in.
That was shutting down their free speech, right?
Yeah. They were going out in protest. Anyone can go out in protest, but there are certain acts that is actually going to be incitement and hate, and that's why the law prescribes to that, and they have it very clear. If you have a problem, go and attack the law, the judicial system, the kind of protection acts that we have, because I see it as something that is there which keeps, the civilization going in this country, which is better than anywhere in the world.
Well, it's interesting.
And it's not actually because taking away freedom is doing it again in such a way that we can speak, but within reason. Because what are we showing our future children?
Well, this is the
what
point.
Are we doing all of
this is the point. I mean, I would argue it's really I'd argue the same point, but from the opposite point of view is that putting on blasphemy laws like this is what threatens our society.
It's not blasphemy laws.
Would you agree with that? Well, it is. It's blasphemy laws by the back door.
No, it's not.
Well, if you've got somebody being found guilty
what the definition of blasphemy laws is, it means that you cannot speak at all. This is
but you're placing limits on a criticism of an ideology. That's blasphemy laws.
No, we're not. He can criticize. Just don't burn the book.
Sorry, Alejandro, we're going to let you speak because we believe in free speech, but it's just me and you, fan man.
I would point Fahima to the words of Lord Justice Sedley in the Court of Appeal, and he said that free speech includes the heretical, the unwelcome, the provocative, and he said free speech that only includes the right to speak inoffensively isn't worth having. And I think that is what is happening these days.
Well, you know what?
I would take the words of Jesus, peace be upon him, where he wouldn't like this. We come in and we talk about Christianity. It does not come in line with British values, nor does it come in line.
Jesus probably would stand up for them, but whatever.
I would prefer a country that is more Christian, and these things would not happen because that is not in line with even any faith that would happen.
Well, I personally worry that our country would be over if we were unable to criticise Islam in an extreme fashion. And criticise any religion, by the way. Any religion. But anyway, I'm going to go and burn my copy of Da Vinci Code. But I want to give a big thank you very much to my guest, the political commentator Famer Mohammed.
So yeah, I mean, there you go. I mean, listen, I gave you my thoughts and opinions on it at the start, really, but yeah, no, I do think it's a dangerous road to go down. As stated, it's not actually illegal within the United Kingdom to burn flags or any religious textbooks, but as they say, they kind of do it through the back door, as one of the guys was saying there, in terms of blasphemy laws, and that's a really, really dangerous road to go down. It really, really is. But guys, do let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.